Hello, this is Malorian. This is the Orc Tactical Team again, making sure that for those that wanted a fantasy one, we got a fantasy one there. And this one is actually a viewer request question. And they said, Malorian, if you were to go and design 9th edition, what changes would you make? And this is something I've touched on before, especially with the 2,000 subscriber thank you thing. I had already touched on this there, but you know what? I thought, hey, let's do a video for this. Again, I mean, if you guys ever want me to talk about anything, just go ahead and ask it. One of the problems I have now is that I've pretty much talked about everything at this point, and it's really, I mean, I could rehash some things, but I don't know how much you guys be getting from that. So really, if there's something that you really want to get from this, I mean, let me know. No matter what army it's from, I have all the books, and I can give you my thoughts and hopefully help you out. But anyway, for this one here, what changes would I make if I was going to 9th edition? And the first thing is about combat. And I mean, I like the ideas of how they've been going with steadfast and the extra attacks from the supporting rank and the horde rank and all this stuff. But the real thing I'd like to see is just the flanks being more important. I mean, they still are important. Of course, if you ever get hit in the flank, even though you can go through turn to, you know, okay, I don't care if you're in my flank, I'm steadfast, I'll turn around, blah, blah, blah. And I don't even care if you disrupt my ranks, doesn't really change anything. The big thing that needs to be there is the whole fact that if you are in a flank and you're disrupting ranks, that you also take away steadfast. I'm a huge believer in this. Of course, it doesn't fit all situations. I mean, there's nothing stopping you taking a unit of 100 dwarf hammerers and we're stubborn anyway. Or I have a character in there and it has the stubborn crown. We're stubborn anyway. We don't care. But for the most part, it would just really make the game more dynamic and forcing things to the flank. Another thing I'd really like to see go away is the ability to redirect your charge. And the reason why I'd like to see that is just because right now you almost have to go and have tons of crazy chaff just to try and redirect a major unit. So, you know, I can throw up my wolf riders and you charge them. Haha, you know, I redirected you. Nope, pass leadership. Now you're charging my main block. Well, that sucks. The only way you get around this is if you're lucky and you take lots of chaff, or maybe you're something like Skaven, you got a bunch of really cheap engineers you can just throw out there forever, and okay, double charge, you're done. Double charge, you're done. And I mean, there's the people out there that actually do that as a tactic, and it's even seen as cheesy because it is kind of silly. We're just kind of like throwing this little stuff up there all the time, and the army just basically doesn't even move. But really, what they would do is if that actually was the case where you can't redirect, all of a sudden it would make things a little bit more important for how you're dealing with your chaff. And also the whole thing, too, is it would also take away the power from these Death Star units. Because all of a sudden it's a lot easier to, okay, you have 1,000 points in this one unit. Well, okay, well, I got a unit there and they're going to have to redirect over this way. I mean, still, they'll have the rules in there where if you get to the combat and kill them, they could always reform. Or if they flee and you catch them, then you can catch them and reform. But just the fact where you can send them away and go somewhere else, I've never been a big fan of that in the system right now. The other thing I'd like to see as well, changing if it was going to 9th, is the whole ability of how the challenges work. It's been something that I don't really like too much. I mean, the one side issues a challenge, and then the other side gets to kind of pick whoever they want to take it, or, you know, pass it over and they can lose whoever they want. But there's been a lot of ways to abuse it. I mean, just one kind of situation to give there is the Bretonnians have one item where they can force you to accept. And I've seen some people saying like, wow, this is amazing. It forces you to accept. But it's so silly because the thing you should probably be doing is just not issuing a challenge and just killing the guy in combat, right? There's so many ways around that are more easier to guarantee it without using this item. And I think really the best thing for these challenges is I'd like to see it so that whenever you issue a challenge, the character with that's worth the most points, the character, not just the model, is the one that's supposed to be taking the challenge. And that if you refuse, it gives victory points to the opponent. And really what this does is it kind of brings back the whole thing where it'll put more importance on these characters, and the whole fact where I can't just be, you know, oh, I'll just have a little champion there, go and take it. Because I really don't see how that should really work with the system anyway. I mean, there's one thing where the unit champ will be stunning to defend the mage or something like that so that he doesn't die. But there's also the whole thing where, oh, well, I'm just going to take this challenge with this unit champ so that my killy lore can just go and kill stuff. It's just something that really bothered me. So if there was some sort of trade-off at least, so if you did that, then there's a victory points trade-off, something like that. I just like to see the whole challenge system change just slightly the way it works. One other ways I like to see things change is in the magic phase. I do like how they kind of changed the magic phase and how they made it so that you can't just take tons of wizards and haha, I have now 20 power dice and you have 4 and there's not very much you can do. I mean, that's what I used to always do with my vampire accounts, just take tons of magic and just dominate the magic phase. And so I'm very happy that they changed that, had Winds of Magic, make it so that's less reliable, but then you still have the whole thing where you have these mega spells and it's just 6 dice, 6 dice, 6 dice. I mean, not everybody does it, but I think really at that top play, I mean, or you have Dark Owls where it's like, well, 12 dice, right? You can be throwing as many as you want. Because, I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? You'll get a miscast. You might have an item or something where you get to reroll what the miscast is. Most of the time, the miscast doesn't even do anything to you. Even if you get the worst miscast, it only ever kills you on a 4+. It's just the miscasts aren't as bad, well, they're just so worth it compared to what the spell gives you. I mean, if I'm going to be going and giving my unit +4 toughness and guarantee I'm going to be winning this combat, who cares if I blow up and kill a couple of my guys? Or will I even? Because now that they're toughness 8, this little blast might not be wounding them. You know, it's stuff like that. So I really like to see how that could change. And the way that I'd see that changing is just bring back a rule from the last edition. And that'd be the rule where if you ever get 2 1s when you're casting, the spell fails. Now, of course, this is going to have to change because it used to be if you rolled 2 1s, that was a miscast. Now, I don't think you'd have to force that in. Really, I wouldn't care if you made it a miscast anyway. You know, the spell doesn't happen and it's a miscast. And of course, you have it so that the double 1s tops over and beats the double 6s. But even if just, you know, the spell was not cast successfully, done. So all those dice you threw, they're completely wasted. Your caster, of course, now he's failed a spell, so he can't cast anything else, and now you've lost 6 dice, and your opponent just has that many more spell dice to deal with your remaining ones. And because really, I mean, you get the people throwing those 6 dice hoping for the super high power or the double 6s, but if there was that risk of, well, what if I get double 1s and this is a complete waste, then you'd at least see people saying, well, maybe I'll bring it back a bit. Maybe I'll go for the 5 dice. Maybe I'll go with 4 dice. You know, maybe I'm going to change my tactics completely, and I'm going to start throwing, you know, a bunch of 2 dice spells or something. And I just see that a lot more tactical, a lot more interesting instead of just bam, 6 dice for the Gork. Because man, even though I like killing units with that, it gets boring to me too. So there you have it. That's one of the things there with the magic phase I'd like to see changing. Of course, the only other part with that would be dwarves. That's not really 9th edition. That's the whole thing where they've already fixed Empire, where they can't get infinity dispel dice. They still have to do the same thing with dwarves, but I'm sure that's going to be coming up. Something else that I'd also like to see happening in the new edition that was actually a viewer request as well for me to talk on, but I was just trying to find the right place to put it in, was in the past I was talking about how if you go way back to some of the older books, there were so many options. When you're looking for making your characters, you could basically give them anything. You know how right now there's a book where are the list of the magical common items, and it's massive, and everybody has all these things you can pick up. Well, basically that was the same thing for weapons as well, so that you could give, oh, you want to give your orc war boss a sling? Whatever. You want to give him a crossbow? Yeah, whatever. These are the points. Do it. You know, it all kind of balances itself out in the end. Giving your caster a slingshot is not going to break the game at the end of the day. And that's something I'd like to see coming back. Not only just with the characters, this also goes with the other units as well. You used to be able to give orcs great weapons and have crossbows and all this stuff. And of course, there's some situations like if you talk to a Lizardman player and say like, "Whoa, I can give my Saurus great weapons." That's amazing. You know, that's so crazy. That's so broken. Of course, I'm going to do that. One of the things, of course, they usually don't realize is the fact that then you're also getting a lot worse in combat as well. Once you have a Lizardman player where they're not getting their shield bonus or their parry and they only have a 5+ armor, all of a sudden you're going to start losing a lot of Saurus before they even swing. So these things do all balance out, and I would like to see a lot more options going back to the books. And that can be done with the 9th edition. It could be said that well, probably the easiest thing if you're going to a main book is just have common unit upgrades, and it's something that probably be best maybe started there and then going into the army books. But man, I just like to see a lot more things going out there. And I mean, if nothing else, this would be a smart move for GW, because if right now this happened in an FAQ errata, right now, the first thing everybody would do was look at all their armies and, man, think about what unit would I love to have in here with this different weapon option. And right away, they're going to start building lists for it and go out buy another unit or more boxes so they can be converting to make it. I mean, if I had it, I probably have a horde of great weapon orcs within a week, right? That'd be no problem. Like, bam, man, I gotta try this out. And then over the months and years, I'd be trying out all the other things, right? You know, night goblins with crossbows, why not, right? Just start having fun and putting things together. And that's the big thing too, is that you can't just look at this as the whole competitive aspect. There's so many people out there that would just love to try and make these units. I had one guy that was trying to make a high elf army that was basically based, they were going over to being the dark elves, like, you know what, it's not like they transfer over, but they were ones that were kind of gone over partly, you know, they had joined Malekith, but they hadn't thrown away all their old ways, and all he wanted to do was have one high elf unit that could take repeater crossbows. Not broken by any, you know, measure whatsoever. It's just a conversion and an idea he really wanted to do to try and show how this theme actually was in his army, as opposed to just giving them dark elf heads and painting them black, right? It's little stuff like this here that fluff gamers and people that do it for the hobby would love to have the option to do. And the other part with that too is just giving characters the option to get all these different monsters again. This is something that you were able to do before in these old books, and I talked about before, where there's just this big list of monsters. Try and think of something like Storm of Magic, and just say, you know what, these are the monsters. We got dragons, we got manticores, we got all this stuff. You can pick any of these to be a mount for your lord. You know, go ahead. These are the points. Go ahead. If you want to have a Skaven chieftain on a dragon, that's great. Here's the points. Go and run it. And again, you know, the first thing you might want to look at is the whole competitive aspect of this. But this is something I've actually been playtesting for the last 8 years or something, and that's because I've been running my tournament called Battle of the Beasts, and in this one here, I basically have that as a rule, that you can be mounting your lord on any monster you want. I even go farther than what I'm saying right here. I'm saying don't just take like the standard mounts and give you the options. I just say any monster in the book. You know, you want to put your war boss in a Stonehorn? Whatever. Do you want to be mounting a Tree Man Ancient onto a Tree Man? Sure. You know, go crazy. And because the real thing here is that even though you can think of some crazy combos like, oh man, I could then be putting my Skaven chieftain onto a Bloodthirster and have a Bloodthirster inside of a Skaven army, well, the main thing at the end of the day is that these monsters are balanced in the beginning because there are cannons in the game, and these cannons kill these monsters. And so really, wherever they are, it's still the same deal, right? Man, I'm up against ogres, I'm up against dwarves, I'm up against Empire, I'm up against Skaven, or I'm up against things with the Stone Throwers. I mean, all these different things that can be out there. My monster can be in trouble. And of course, the whole thing there, like I said, if it's an option where it's on your lord, it's also more points on top of that. And now all of a sudden your cannon is hitting both that lord and that monster. So it's almost tactically worse. Well, not almost. It is tactically worse in order to put this there. But the whole thing is all about options, right? There's guys out there that go and they take their dark elf master BSB and they put them on a Manticore. Why they do it? Is it some super tactical, you know, maneuver that they came up with all this like council of geniuses? No, they just think it looks cool, right? I got a Manticore, I got a BSB. This is going to look fantastic. Let's go. And just something like this where I'd like to see a lot more of these options going back in. And like I just said, again, it's a good idea for GW because as soon as that would be out in an errata or in 9th edition, people are going to be running out, buying dragons and different monsters so they can be converting these things up for their army. So there you have it. I mean, most of it not, I mean, the stuff I say at the end seems like very big, but it'd just be like a little page of being thrown in there. The biggest change out of all that I can actually see to the gameplay would really be the whole flanking, making it so it takes away the steadfast. If you disrupt ranks, you also take away steadfast. That's probably would have the biggest effect at everything that I just said here. And probably something else that should also change, that is more of a loophole than really a rule change, is the way that terrain is based. And I really think for the most part, I mean, people can debate how watchtowers are used and the building rules and all this stuff, but in the end, if you ever try and sit down and do your own rules, it really is really difficult to try and find something that's perfect. At the end of the day, one of the things I find that's the most difficult is they need to have more limits to what these things are. I mean, if you have it so that you roll terrain, you get a building. Well, okay, you take a building, you put it down. You roll a forest. Okay, you roll a forest and you put it down. Wait a second, that's not so simple, because there's different sizes of forests, right? You can put down a forest that's yay big, yay big, yay big, or oh no, I'm going to put down a forest that takes up the entire board. Another one that's really changes the game is rivers, right? You can roll up a river, and a river has a massive effect on the game. I had one game against my brother where he put a river right across the board edge, or right in the center of the board there. I was a combat army, he was a shooty army. I got decimated. I didn't really stand a chance whatsoever. So all you really need to do to control these things is start having these limits on it, saying that it can't be more than so many inches across. Or if it's a river or something that's linear, then okay, it can only be this long. That's the way that you're actually getting around this. So that'd be another really simple thing where, again, it's probably not needed for the most part, because it's only when jerks really go above and beyond to try and make this stuff go kind of overly crazy. But it's just to make sure that when you do have this really competitive nature, that there's these little simple limits just thrown in there, just a simple one-line thing that you need to put in there just to try and help limit these things. But there you go. Hope you guys like this, and we'll see you later. Bye.